Hello, friends. Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast, where East meets West, and I'm your host, Dr. Chris Motley. Today, I have a very special guest. He came into Nashville to do the interview, and it was so great, and it worked out well. Dr. Joel Warsh, who just finished and put out a new book, Between a Shot and a Hard Place. And to me, I'm very grateful and thankful that we can discuss this because there's many people out there that have lots of questions, and my family members and people who really want to know about this. Thank you so much, first of all, for coming and joining us today, my man.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to chat.
Oh, this is going to be fun. We've done interviews before. I know you've been on the podcast before, but this is a really important subject. And we know that we've explained where you're at. You're in LA. We can do a small backdrop because we've had you on the podcast before. You can give us, if you would, a brief synopsis because I want to dive right into this, but can you give us a bit of your background as well?
Sure. So I'm a pediatrician. I practice integrative functional medicine. So I did all the regular medical training, but I got a little frustrated with the regular system, so I started learning integrative medicine, and in my practice try to balance the best of both worlds, which is perfect for your podcast, which is exactly what it is, right? Yeah. So I think we're on the same wavelength there, but over the last few years, I've certainly become more comfortable speaking online and posting about things and talking about things, which has been great because I think so many people have questions about health and kids' health in general. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about vaccines. It's been quite the wild ride to get here. I mean, it was not a topic that you could ever talk about really before. I mean, I guess you could, but you would just get censored or pulled down. And so I really didn't talk that much about it outside of my office. But I really felt compelled through the pandemic and after the pandemic to kind of get information out there and talk about the things that I talk about in my office. And that's what led me to write the book. And it's been really exciting. And I'm very grateful that things seem to have changed a lot. And it seems like people are much more open to having conversations and stuff isn't getting censored right now, which is great because I'm not against vaccines. I mean, my position is we should be able to talk about things. We should be able to have conversations. I wrote the book to open up debate and discussion. It's not about getting people to do anything. In my office, I don't force anybody to do anything. I have patients that do the regular schedule, slow schedule, some don't do it, and I feel like we should be able to give information and then let people make the decision that's best for them, like every other thing in medicine. But for whatever reason, vaccines is so controversial, and we need to change that.
And so when you wrote the book and you put this information together, was there any type of resistance, like from your patients or anything like that, or like any type of incongruencies with them?
I mean, not really. I think my patients are a little bit self-selecting, so I think that they're, at least from, I can see it kind of on this side now. I mean, most people didn't really know when I was doing it, so it wasn't like something I was really talking about that much until more recently. I assumed when this was going to come out that I was going to get a lot of resistance and it was going to be really very difficult, because when I obviously started the book, it was years ago, so it's a very different time now. I had been jotting things down for a while, but I wasn't sure if I was going to do it. I decided to do it about a year ago, and then with everything that has changed with Secretary Kennedy and all the discussion around vaccines, I worked on it much harder to get it out a little faster because I think like the time is right now to talk about it. And so I've been very pleasantly surprised. People have taken to it very well. I haven't received a lot of negativity, which I really expected I would. And I hope that's really because I'm trying to bring to it a sense of balance and calm and just a discussion as opposed to pushing people in one way or the other specifically. I think there's just a lot of information. People have a lot of questions, and the pandemic opened up people's eyes to questioning vaccines, and I think that it's time. I mean, it's time to talk about these things and do what's best for our kids. And it's not just about doing more medications. It's about how do we make them the healthiest overall. And there's a risk balance calculation we need to make.
That's one thing I want to talk to you about is like the risk balance.
In training, right? When we're in med school and in residency, you don't learn anything about safety, right? Like you really don't. You learn about the vaccines. You learn about the diseases. You learn about the schedule. And, you're told that major side effects are very rare, like 1 in a million. These are great. These are the best things we've ever have. And here's your schedule and go do it. And you don't really think to question it at all. You learn about these horrible diseases like smallpox and other things that we just don't have anymore. And you're like, okay, these things are great. We have these vaccines. They're magical. And of course, we should be promoting these to everyone. And here's your schedule and go do it. And you don't really think much more than that. That's really where I started with this. But then as I went into the integrative space, I realized and was getting just more questions and more questions about vaccines, and you start to learn about the, I guess, other side or the questions that people have, and you start getting asked those questions. Certainly in my office, the most common reason people come to the office is just because they want to have discussions about vaccines, not because they don't want to do it necessarily, but they feel like they can't even have the discussion with their doctor or other doctors, and so they want to come somewhere where they feel they could talk about it. On social media was the thing I was getting asked about most, and a lot of times people would ask questions and I didn't know the answer, and so I had to start looking into things. I had to start researching things, and the more that you look into it, the more that you realize that a lot of stuff doesn't actually have a lot of great research behind it, or when you do look at things, it's very one-sided. So I think, with any vaccine, like let's say hepatitis B, you look at something that's very mainstream and it's like the best thing ever and it protects you and there are no side effects. And then you look at something on the other side and it's the worst thing ever and it causes all sorts of problems. And we saw that with COVID. It's like the COVID vaccine saved millions of lives and saved trillions of dollars. And then other people are like, no, it's the worst thing ever and it kills everybody. And you're like, okay, but which one's right? And they never talk to each other. Then you never see debates on vaccines or discussions.
You don't really see healthy debates or any. I haven't seen really good debates and discussions at all.
You read the books, you look at the books, and they're very one-sided. And I really wanted to do something different. Like I wanted to have what Paul Offit says right beside what Secretary Kennedy says, or what Peter Hotez says right beside Neil Miller. Like these people have different books with very different perspectives. And as a parent who's like, I just want my kid to be healthy. My kid's healthy and they're beautiful and wonderful. And you're telling me to do all these vaccines, but then my friend's kid has autism and my other friend's kid had a bad reaction, and I don't know what to do. I'm scared. That's a very difficult place to be right now as a parent, because social media, I think, has brought out these stories, and so they're not silent anymore. And even if it is on the rare end, you hear about them and you're like, well, I haven't seen Haemophilus influenza, so should I be worried about that? No, I don't want my kid to get asthma.
Exactly,
so that's what people see right now, and if they can't talk about it, then it just fosters this sense of distrust. That I think that's where we are. People don't trust medicine anymore.
That's a good point. That's what I'm saying. That's leading to the next question. When we talk about trust, individuals, some would say like they don't trust like in their doctors or the hospitals or going and getting tests done.
It's not some, it's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And you're seeing that because when you said like if something's one-sided and there's not a lot of research behind, like let's say one of the vaccines, say, well, there's not enough safety, research on that. More people are waking up to really researching behind each one of them? Is that what you're finding out? Like people really want to dive in?
Yeah, I mean, the research is very, very clear. It's not necessarily specific to vaccines, though I think that's the greater issue. Is just trust in modern medicine. If you look at the big polls, like things that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that research, before the pandemic, it was like 70+% of people trusted in medicine. It's under 40 now.
What?
So it's like we're talking like Pew polls, like big ones. Like it's not insignificant. Most people don't trust healthcare anymore because they feel like it's about money and not about their health, and that plummeted during the pandemic. And then just with vaccines, I mean, we have the highest rates of hesitancy we've ever had, the lowest rates of vaccination, the highest rates of exemptions. So there's no question that people are not trusting in medicine, and I firmly believe that it was already going in that direction, but with the pandemic, with the propaganda of safe and effective and this repetition and being told things very definitively when we didn't know anything definitively, people lost trust. Like they heard safe and effective, and nobody said, well, okay, based on the research that we have, it seems like the benefits outweigh the risks. It seems like you decrease your risk of death and serious illness, and based on the research we have so far in these 2 months or 3 months, we don't see any big safety signals. It seems like it's safe. We don't know anything about long-term safety, but here's why we're recommending it, and we'll see what happens. Like that's honest. That's not what happened. It's safe, it's effective, it's going to work. You're never going to get it. You're not going to have a side effect, and there's just no way that's true, and people, it doesn't matter what you know it's not true. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, well, if that's what they're telling me, and natural immunity doesn't count, even though it always counted before, then well, why should we trust that? What else are they telling us that's not true? And it's opened up this Pandora's box
and it's
of concern.
And with the Pandora's box being opened, more questions, people are less likely to go into like a Western medical route, and more people are like going to integrative, like functional medicine, trying to like use like the combinations, right? Is like more people are coming for that?
Everything. There's not enough space for the people that want to go into, like there's just everybody. There's so many people that want to have this balance, and there just aren't that many practitioners that are doing it. But I think on a greater sense that just many people don't trust the modern medical system anymore, and that's a problem. Like we need to trust our establishments, and I mean, and you see like the consequence of all this is you have individuals like Secretary Kennedy who are running HHS for better or worse, and it's like that's a diametric opposite, polar opposite. Like the guy who was considered like the most woo out there is running health a year later, and that's the reaction to what has happened with medicine, which is like we need this alternative, and you know, unfortunately it got so extreme that now you're putting in the other extreme, and you know, we'll see how that goes. But
it truly now seeing like this shift, because like you said before, if you mention anything about a vaccine, you know, 4 years ago or 3 years ago, you'd have to be very conscious about what you said. And one of the things that I really love about the book is that when you talk about different types of vaccinations, and you just talk about, like, you know, if you had something with Haemophilus or if you got a hepatitis shot. In the book, though, can you explain, like, some individuals will wonder why they have to keep getting, like, let's say a vaccine for a particular condition, whether it's hepatitis, even though there's not a big hepatitis outbreak. Is it just that they want to keep the schedule going because it's just the norm, or is it because like they think that this thing could actually ever come up again? You know, like keep getting hepatitis shots or keep getting, you know, a certain type of vaccination.
Yeah, it's a good question. So each disease is different because some things are still fairly common in the world, and other things are not as common. Everything that we're vaccinated for exists. It's just some are more common, less common. Most things are not very common, but that's arguably because of the vaccines, at least to some part. But reason why the schedule is as it is the individuals who research it, the companies that research it, studied it, and they're promoting it in a way that's supposed to be the most effective. So if you're getting one, it might protect you 70% of the time, two, 90% of the time, 3, 99% of the time. So they're trying to protect most people. For the vaccines where it protects for herd immunity, they're trying to get as many people as possible. I mean, obviously, the point of a vaccine in general is to give you some protection before, so that way if you're exposed to the thing in the future, then you have the protection, you don't get very sick from it. That's the theoretical benefits of it. I mean, that's why we have the schedule that we have. And it would be very arrogant to be like, I know better than the CDC. So I don't ever say that. That's why I don't tell people what to do. But I do think that we haven't been able to question things in the past. And I think it is very reasonable to question things because we're at a very different point in time where 100 years ago we were really worried about dying from infections. We're not so worried about that anymore. We are worried about chronic disease. And the question really is how much or how, if it at all, did these vaccines play into chronic disease? Are they causing it? Are they contributing to it? Or do they have nothing to do with it? And I think that's the major concern amongst parents and amongst individuals in making this risk-benefit calculation, because they're just not sure. Like, is it related to autism? Is it related to asthma? And you know, depends on what you read. Modern medicine says no, but it's not always based on the best research in science.
That's like with that research, and I know we can go at many different angles, but do you see that there is research out there, like you've accumulated in the book, that, again, I'm not saying they cause all harm, but you're seeing like a trend, like people who did get certain vaccinations would have more prone to have asthma, and there's studies and research behind it showing that?
So for chronic disease, I mean, you have to go back first, and you have to understand what the research is, and we're told these things are so safe, and you look at something that's very standard, it's like, no, it doesn't cause these things, but there's actually a lot of excellent science on some of these chronic conditions that it might be related, but the issue is we don't have the best kind of science because nobody has ever followed kids forward and done vaccinated versus unvaccinated studies. So we don't actually have a perfect picture on a lot of these things. When you're doing the research, originally, the companies are doing it, and it's usually pretty short term. They're doing a preclinical trial, and it might be a couple weeks, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year or two, but nothing's following kids for 5 or 10 years. So we don't really know. You're just doing some retrospective or maybe some basic studies by researchers. Usually they're biased, you know, pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, whatever it is. But then they're going to find often what they're looking for, which is, oh, these things never cause a problem. Or sometimes you find, oh, well, if you change things up, it could. So again, mainstream medicine says, no, it's not a problem. But I think we don't actually know. And I think there is some research on both sides that is pretty compelling. And so I think we need to really look into it appropriately now.
That's a good point, because I don't, when they say that a researcher followed this group of 100 people for over 10 or 15 years, I've never really heard that.
Not with vaccines. They've never.
I've never seen that following them for even 5 years, like you said.
No, and even if they are following them, it's not vaccinated versus unvaccinated. So it's, you got these vaccines versus these vaccines. I mean, that's where even the research with autism, it's like you would think it's so settled, right?
Yeah.
That's what we were told. That's what I was taught, and I assumed that it was absolutely settled, that we have amazing science, we got all this good research. And when I went to even write the book, right, even I know, like, a good amount of science, but I was like, okay, I've been told forever it's debunked. It's settled, and you hear it so definitively online, on the news, everything that you hear. So one would assume, I assumed, that I was going to find this amazing body of research, really great studies that are going to show vaccines don't cause autism. That's what I thought I was going to find. But I know, because I'm in the integrative space, that, okay, there's some other researchers, there's some other studies, there's some other information that maybe there's some stuff out there that's going to say that maybe it's related in some way. So I want to show both. Like, here's why we say this with this really good body of evidence, but here's the other stuff. But when you actually look, there is no good body of evidence. There's like nothing. The only things that exist are on MMR and thimerosal, and that was the most shocking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Really?
We have not studied the question at all. There's no research on vaccinated versus unvaccinated. Almost all the research is just on MMR and thimerosal, which is not even in vaccines anymore. Thimerosal is the mercury component.
Yeah.
So it's really just on MMR, and it's MMR in kids that are vaccinated with the other vaccines and MMR, or just the other vaccines without MMR. So there's nothing on all the vaccines you get in the first year. There's nothing on the cumulative effect. There's nothing on any of the real questions. So we just don't know.
Like a parent, they go to the pediatrician, and they have a schedule coming up. In your book, what I love about it is that you gave good scenarios and good examples about, like, if a person makes a decision, like, I am going to get a vaccine, and some people say I'm not going to. What is it when the person gets like a vaccine, and they'll talk about heavy metals, they'll talk about things in a vaccine that makes it bad? Can you explain just the basics of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are many different ingredients in a vaccine. There's a long list, but the major components would be the actual antigen. So you're getting the bacteria or the virus, the piece of that, you're putting that in so your body makes an immune response. That's the major component. But there are a lot of other things to make the vaccine work. So you might have buffers to make sure that the pH is okay. You want to have preservatives in there to make sure it doesn't get a contamination with a bacteria or a fungus. But I think the most concerning, I guess, for parents would be the metals. I think that's really, like, aluminum's really the biggest concern amongst parents right now, and the reason that's in there for some of the vaccines that are based on just a small part of the vaccine, so a small part of the disease, so you're giving like some proteins, then in general they don't work that well on their own. You're not going to get as robust an immune response, so they put aluminum in there, which is an adjuvant, so it helps to stimulate a better immune response, and it certainly helps the vaccines to work better in terms of protection against those diseases. So for a fair amount of the vaccines on the childhood schedule, they have aluminum in them, and that is the major, I would think. In general, I mean, there are other things people are concerned about, but that's the number one concern at the moment, just because people are, concerned about metals.
Definitely. It's like, so they have components within them. They have certain purposes they want to use, but they could create maybe some toxicities within a person, or people handle it differently.
That's the concern. So as of modern medicine, they would say, well, it's a very, very small amount. It's safe. It's been studied. It doesn't cause an issue. That's the mainstream opinion on aluminum. And they say things like, there's aluminum in the environment. We're exposed to aluminum every day. We eat a lot more aluminum than in vaccines, and all that's true. I mean, all that's 100% true. We eat a fair amount of aluminum every day. It's part of our food. We're getting it. So that part is true. The question is, okay, so we're getting aluminum in our vaccines. Vaccines are not ingested, it's injected, which is a different mechanism. Your body's handling it differently. And does every kid handle that well? Is it, with this cumulative amount of doses that we're getting, is that too much? Because it's not an insignificant amount. In water, we have a standard, 0.2 milligrams per liter.
Yeah.
In a hepatitis B vaccine, it's 0.25 milligrams. So it's not like it's such an insignificant amount that you're like, oh, it's just so small. It's a lot less than you're eating. That's true. But they would say, well, you get a lot of water, it's a cumulative amount, it's a lot more, and a vaccine's just a vaccine, so it's like such a small amount, it's infrequent, so it's okay. And I don't think that takes into account the biology of injecting something versus ingesting something, and it doesn't mean that it's dangerous, but that's the argument, and I think that people are thinking about things like lead, where we're like, oh, lead was totally fine in paint and totally fine in our plumbing.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden we're like, well, maybe it's not.
It's the truth. So I love going through the science because I don't know as like you're the expert here. So if you got a shot and you say like an adjuvant, like if you had aluminum, it can stimulate the body to create an immune response, like draw the body's attention to that area. And
that's what it's supposed to do. That's what it does. So it stimulates the immune response. It helps make a more robust immune response, better immune memory. Like that's the purpose of it, because it's a product. It's in there. It's aluminum. So it's making your body react to the thing more than just a little protein, which it might not have a full reaction to. So that's the good part of it. The question is there a bad part?
That would be something where if they did have more of that information with each vaccination, I would really be interested what kind of data they would prove. But there's none. You say that they're really going to provide in that manner. But
there's some research on aluminum for sure. There is definitely research on aluminum. It's not so much in the way of long-term research. It's more on short-term stuff.
Gotcha.
So that's what the big issue is, and I think again it's pretty biased, like biased research from individuals that have an agenda, that work for the CDC, things like that, where they're the head of safety at the CDC for vaccines. They're very unlikely to be like, oh, this thing is unsafe. It's not that you should do research. It's just has always been a lot of bias, and so it's very hard to know what's true and what's not true. And again, I'm not saying it's unsafe. I'm just saying it's not unreasonable to ask.
Yes, there shouldn't be, somebody coming against you, or saying you're doing the wrong thing as a parent or something to do the vaccine. And I'm with you about getting really good research and good data before you make the decision. Now, some of my patients have asked if one of their children get a vaccination. Some do a slower schedule, and some say that it's actually good for their child, like they'll do it like after age 1 or 2. Is that really a real thing? Like, as in it is good for some people to do it on a slower schedule, or does it even matter if they do a slow schedule? Because there's so many new vaccines they're trying to put in. How many are there now?
It depends what number, like 30 to 50. But if all the doses, like 90, 100, depending. Like, it depends if you're counting like just the antigens. But yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah. So is it good if a parent does decide to do the vaccine? I know, is it better that they do a slower schedule, or it's just up to them?
Ultimately it's up to them, right? Because the only thing that you can recommend as a doctor is the CDC schedule, and that's the only thing that's been studied. We really haven't studied slow schedules. We haven't studied whether there is a benefit to going slower, whether there is a reduction of side effects. So the theory is this. For people that want to do a slow schedule, they say, well, I don't want to do as many at once because I want to decrease the load on the immune system. I want to wait a little bit longer so the immune system's more developed. Whether that is true or whether that is better, we don't know, because those are the kind of questions we should be asking, right? We should be saying, like,
exactly.
Okay, we have this schedule that we've done, which people have put together over the years, but rarely is it really studied in combination, if at all. Okay, well, let's study this schedule versus what if we change things up? What if we move some things back? It's not like every country in the world does the same thing. Lots of other countries do different things. So we're pretty arrogant here that we have like the best or only way. There could be some things that we could theoretically do. Maybe, I don't know, you move hepatitis B back from the first day to later in life, and maybe that decreases. I don't know, but those are the questions we should be asking, because it's not just about protecting against diseases. It's also minimizing side effects. And we seem to just want to do more and earlier just to prevent against certain diseases, but we don't have the discussion around what it might be causing and whether there's some sort of risk-benefit calculation there that we need to be taking into effect. Because I want to protect kids against disease, right? I don't want kids to get measles, but the question is not, does this vaccine protect against the disease? It's at what cost? Right? At what cost? What are the side effects? What are the long-term implications? Are we healthier overall? Do we need all of these vaccines? We need to do them when we're doing them. That's the kind of research that we need to make people more confident to do it. Because if it is causing a problem, let's just say that aluminum is related to asthma, and aluminum increases your risk of asthma by 10 times. I don't know. I'm just making that up. Then wouldn't we want to know that? Like, wouldn't we want to
exactly
know
right. Yes.
that it
Yes.
is? No doctor's giving this product or vaccines because they want to harm a kid. They are doing it because they believe in it, because they want to help kids, because they want to protect kids from disease. So if it is contributing, we need to know that so we could say, look, is there anything different we need to do? Maybe this ingredient like aluminum is not the best thing. Maybe we can find a different adjuvant that doesn't cause these problems, but also gives you the benefit. Like, why don't we want to think like that? Like,
Yes.
we want to protect kids, but we also don't want to cause other issues. But you can't discuss this if you can't even talk about it.
That is a great point, especially in the book about how when you take research and they, like RFK is talking about, we need some science-backed data to make sure that we're given the right information. But there's a lot of parents out there that have come, in the office, but they've asked me some questions, and I'm not the expert. I would refer to people that doctors like you, and they feel as though they're going to do a disservice, or they're afraid they're going to put their child at risk, like you say, get measles and such. Now, because they'll come to me and say, we need to get a whooping cough, we need to do measles. What do you think? And I have to pull myself out of that conversation. It's like, that's between you and your primary. Why, with all the vaccines, like you say, up to 40 or 50, I don't know the numbers now, is it just because these infections have been just hiding in culture and they just pop up, or is like there's a big outbreak of measles here or something, and they find these infections everywhere, or have they just been subtly in our culture for a long time, and finally they're like, we need to make a vaccine for this?
I mean, all these diseases have been around and still are around. I think that the research is pretty good on efficacy. Like, we have a pretty good idea of how well these things work. For example, with measles, like it works about 97% of the time if you get 2. So it's pretty good. Kids that have the vaccines don't generally get measles, right? It's possible, but it's super rare. We originally had a very high rate of these diseases before vaccines. It really plummeted before vaccines came on the market because we were much healthier just in general. So there's no question that nutrition and sanitation and antibiotics and hospital care really decreased the spread and also how severe it was. Like, most of the deaths from most of these diseases were gone well before vaccines came on the market. But there were still many cases of a lot of these things. And when the vaccines came on the market, they plummeted. They went down to almost zero because for the most part they work. So like, that part of it is good. And now we just don't see a lot of these diseases because they're just not that common, but they still happen to be around. And the more people that don't get vaccinated, the more we see it. And that's why we've seen more whooping cough and more measles in the last few years, because it's just there are more people questioning it and fewer people are getting vaccines. So they do have their purpose, but it just seems like now it's like, if we can make a vaccine for something, we do. And if we can get on the market, we go for it. And again, it's just because we have a vaccine doesn't mean we should take it. I mean, you don't want your kids to get some of these things. So there's some positive and negative there.
Yeah.
But it's not cut or dry. It's not black and white. And we need to have discussions, because otherwise we're going to have 10,000 vaccines or 1,000 vaccines. And that may not be good. Just because we can have more doesn't mean we're going to be healthier.
Yes. If you had more and more added on, and if there's more adjuvants or more, even preservatives in the body, that could possibly like give issues. But my thoughts asking about like genes and genetics. So genetics could have a role in how a person processes a vaccine, like how
I would, of course. I mean, genetics has a role in everything, right? Everybody's different. Everybody processes things differently. We're exposed to different environments. We have different genetics. So again, it's just a very intelligent question, which we've not discussed ever. In vaccines, like, how are different people different? How are your genetics different?
Right.
What can we do? What can we research to figure out how do we minimize reactions? Like, can we get people's genetics who've had a bad reaction and see if we can find a trend? Maybe there's some sort of markers or genes. Maybe there's some supplements or herbs you could take before or after to minimize your risk of certain things. Like, there's nothing woo-woo about that. You want people to get vaccines. Let's figure out how to minimize the risk. That's going to get more people to vaccinate.
Yes.
And you're going to have fewer side effects. Like, there's nothing controversial about it. But I think as of still, like right now, there's this push to make sure that everybody vaccinates at all costs, and any discussion of it brings up a discussion around the potential problems, and medicine just doesn't want that. It just doesn't want a discussion around any potential effects, because if there's some potential side effects, that maybe people won't do it. And I think it's the opposite. I think we've gone past that at this point, and medicine's actually creating hesitancy. Like, we have the highest rates of unvaccinated kids and the highest rates of people getting exemptions and the highest rates of some of these diseases, because people are just not doing it anymore. They don't trust medicine, and that's because we're not discussing it. And I think if we focused back on safety and we said, look, nothing's perfect, everything has side effects, but we're going to try to figure out which kids have the most risk, and we're going to try to make things safer in the future. Then people would be more comfortable with that. I would be.
Yeah, they would if they had more of this information. Like, if you were going to help with the side effects, has there ever been, okay, so genes have a definite play in it, how they handle it, but even in the ingredients, like, could they use cleaner ingredients in a vaccine, you think? Or
well, why not, right? Like, well, I mean, cleaner is like a subjective word, but could we make a vaccine that causes fewer side effects in the future? Of course we can. We've done that before. We've taken off things off the market and made better vaccines. They had the original DTaP vaccine, the whole cell, which was causing encephalitis. They pulled off the market. Have the new DTaP. The original rotavirus was causing intussusception, blockages in the bowel. They got a new one. It's better. The original polio vaccine wasn't made properly. Gave a bunch of people polio. Like, it's not funny. Like, these things have happened, and we've changed it. So yes, of course, if we actually study things for safety and continue studying things for safety, do you think we have the best possible vaccines humanity's ever going to have? No, we could definitely get better vaccines, but we would have to look at it. And right now, who does the research? It's the companies. Why is a company going to study their own vaccine after it's on the market and they have no liability? They're not going to say, oh, well, let's spend $10 million or no, it's like $1 billion. Let's do a study, the right kind of study. Let's look for problems. Let's see if we can find those problems. And then once we find those problems, we're going to have to pull our product off the market. Wow. They're not going to do that.
They're not going to do that at all.
We have to do that. We have to say, we don't trust in these things for sure. We don't trust that the company did the best research or did everything right or looked for everything or followed things for 10 years. Let's do that. Let's see if we can find a problem. If we do find a problem, we need to fix that problem. We have to do that. No one's doing it right now.
Wow. And I guess it would mean that if you did do that research, or like, and we're going to find out, I guess they don't want that information to come out, so they're already saying, like, we're going to do the research ourselves, and this is what you have to take.
Nobody does it. Wow. Nobody does long-term research on vaccines.
None. And so what was the rule I heard about that they can't be, you just said there's no liability, that they can't be sued, is that right?
Yes. So in 1986, the Liability Act, so basically around that time, there were a bunch of lawsuits, mainly around the original DTP vaccine, because there was concerns around it causing encephalitis and other issues with the brain. And with a vaccine, the damages are very high, because you have a healthy kid, you give that kid the vaccine and some sort of problem happens, and then it's a huge lawsuit, right? So that was happening. A lot of vaccine makers went off the market because they were too concerned about getting sued too much liability, and the solution was, well, we can take the liability away from the companies, and we can put it on. We can create this program where a few cents from every vaccine goes into this fund, and then if you do have a reaction that we consider a reaction, you can sue the government, and then the government can pay you if that happens. So the companies are not completely 100% not liable, but basically not liable, because you have to go through this program first, and it's really hard to ever sue a company, and they don't really ever get sued.
Their own research, and now, like, with the new Make America Healthy Again, like that whole movement, is it going to be that they're going to try to do as much research as they can about each one, so they have like a whole new set of team players that are going to do it?
I mean, well, one thing we know is they're going to do more. They're definitely interested in it. I mean, Secretary Kennedy has been interested in vaccines his whole life, or not his whole life, but the last several decades. So he's very passionate about the topic, and we'll certainly see more. It's not an easy topic, because the problem with vaccine research is, now that we have stated as a community that vaccines are very good and needed, then it becomes unethical to study kids that are unvaccinated by the proper research, because you're not giving them the standard of care. You're leaving them exposed. So you can't get the research they should have done originally, which is studying vaccinated versus unvaccinated kids. Wow. So it makes it very, very difficult to do some of that research. So a lot of what we've heard recently is about placebos, right? There's been a lot of discussion about placebo testing and placebo trials. Yeah. So most vaccines on the childhood schedule have never been studied against an inert placebo, meaning saltwater or saline. So they're usually studied against another vaccine, the earlier version of a vaccine, or the vaccine minus the antigen with all the active ingredients.
Yeah.
That's the way that a lot of research was done. So that's where Secretary Kennedy was talking about, well, we need inert placebo testing moving forward, which there should be no controversy around that. If we have a new vaccine, there's nothing on the market, why shouldn't we make the companies have the best possible safety data available? And the easiest example is this. Let's say, take a study. You're looking at a new vaccine completely. You're studying vaccine A versus another vaccine. In that study, 10 people get a seizure in group A, 10 people get a seizure in group B. The study's done. They're like, okay, there's no safety concerns because both people in both groups got 10 seizures, so there's no increased risk of harm. But if you had group C, inert saline, had 1 seizure, 10 versus 1, it's very different. So you need that inert placebo trial to look at what the actual rates should be, and we never did that for most of the vaccines. So he's saying when we're going forward, we need to do that. There should be no ethical concerns about that. We should make people do it. That's the best possible science for safety. Why don't we want that? They studied against the meningococcus vaccine. There's no reason to do that unless you're trying to minimize your risk of seeing minimize your chances of seeing a problem. So that's how they did things.
Minimize your risk of seeing a problem.
Right, because so you're going A versus B, because when you're doing a blinded trial, where you don't know who's in each group, unless you're going to fudge the data totally, the only way to stack the deck is to say, I'm going to study a thing that's probably going to have the same side effects.
Oh, man.
Right? So that's how they do it, because if you have a problem with both vaccines, you don't see it as a problem, right? You see it as the same safety, so therefore it's safe. It's not worse. So it's smart how they do it, right? It's smart because they're not required to do it against saltwater, so they often will study against another vaccine, so that way they can kind of mask their risks a little bit. So they do that. Now, if you have a vaccine on the market, that's different, because then you're saying, well, we have something, so we have to study against the older version because we can't not give kids. So that is ethical in that way, but it was never done originally properly in the first place. That's the problem. So if you're studying the old DTaP versus the new DTaP, well, the old DTaP was taken off the market for safety concerns.
Oh,
right?
And
so you're comparing those two. So you're assuming the new one is safe, but it was never studied originally in the right way. So this is a very unfortunate situation we're in now, where it's like we don't have this original safety data that we wanted, but it's unethical to do it. So it's kind of a pickle.
It's blowing my mind right now. What are the companies, like, they're going to have their own data at times? Like, are there like big main companies that do it, or can we talk about that? I mean, is there
the big companies that do vaccines are Pfizer and Sanofi. Make most of the, Johnson & Johnson makes some. But it's mostly those. I mean, they're the big companies. I mean, there are like 4 or 5 companies that make vaccines. Not very many.
Yeah.
Because they just, they stuck in the game at the right time.
And have they, with lawsuits, is it true? I've heard like there were like vaccine injury lawsuits very long time ago. I mean, like even 30 years ago, or is it just more recently that you're finding out?
No, there were lots of lawsuits. That's why they made that act, because there were so many lawsuits that companies were going out of business.
Wow.
So right before, it was mostly around the DTP vaccine. It was never proven to be unsafe, air quotes, but there were a lot of kids that had reactions that they were worried that it was about vaccine, so they were getting sued, and it was so expensive. That's why most of the companies went off the market, except for the few ones that were left, and they had to protect them. So that's what happened. So there were all these lawsuits, right or wrong, whether that was true or not. But that's what they did. So there are plenty. Like, so now you sue the government basically if you feel like there's a reaction.
When you have these lawsuits going crazy, my first thought too is how you would describe on your social media page about like make sure you're eating plenty of vegetables and fruits. And this may sound a little too simplistic, but is there ways that if a young person or a person who gets a vaccine, if they took the right nutrients, like whether it be food or whether it be minerals or vitamins, for people who decide they want to do vaccine, is that very important to do that, like to add that in to help?
Well, it's a good question, right? Of course, we should research that,
right?
Yeah. Like again, of course it matters.
Yeah.
The healthier you are, the better it is, and the lower the risk, I would assume, because that's true of everything. But again, it's like, where is that research? Where is the research on our genetics, on our food, on our lifestyle? Like, how do you minimize your risk of having a reaction from a vaccine? None of that exists. Right? Of course we should be like, you want to have people get a vaccine, study how you minimize risk. study those genetics, figure it out, figure out the factors of why people do have a reaction, and try to minimize those factors. We never talk about that. And how is that controversial?
To me, though, it makes total sense, because then if you do that, you would increase trust.
Exactly.
And more people would be more, like you were saying, be more willing to go do it if there was transparency in that.
And you'd also, as a physician, you would be less likely to create a problem with the product you give a patient. Every doctor wants to do that. Nobody's giving a vaccine because they want to harm a kid. Of course not. They're doing it because they feel like these products are fantastic and they're the best things we ever had, and we had all these horrible diseases and we got rid of these diseases because of these magical products. That's why we're doing it. So if you give doctors the data and the science to say, look, here are the kids where there's an increased risk. Here's the kids that we don't think we should get vaccines, or we should do it in a different way or slower, or these kids should take this supplement or herb or whatever it is to decrease the risk. Of course, doctors are going to do it. Yeah. They're not trying to harm people.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm looking at this at different angles. So if you had the research that says, you taking supplement vitamins and minerals could actually help this, help you with processing, getting a vaccination. One of the things I really wanted to find out about diving into vaccines and such, I don't want to go too far off into a rabbit trail, but what about like the spike formula? And I'm not trying to change it too quickly, but it's like we had COVID vaccine. They were talking about spikes, and so it gets into your bloodstream, and then there's a supplement that they say could actually pull some stuff out, like pull the spikes out. Is that right?
Maybe. I mean, I would think that almost anything like that hasn't been studied very much.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes back to like kind of either common sense or just a general knowledge of detoxification, and like, okay, maybe this works, maybe it helps, it probably doesn't cause any problem, so that's we're going to do it. Like when people ask me about detoxification, let's say in the office, I go back to, okay, well, what do we know about detoxification? How do you get things out in general as a kid? You poop, pee, and you sweat. So let's do things that support that, especially things that are known to be safe. And this may not help at all, but maybe it'll help a little bit. It's not going to harm you. So if you have a kid, like make sure they're moving.
Yeah.
Make sure they're getting sunlight and they're sweating. You want to support their peeing and their pooping, right? So like magnesium helps get things out, helps calm the belly. Make sure they're drinking a lot of fluids and not dehydrated around the time when you're getting a vaccine. Like none of that it's okay. Is it proven that it's better? No, but obviously it's good, right? Like these things are good for your health in general, so why not do it? If you want to take supplements that are known to help with detoxification, pull out metals, go for it. But again, it hasn't been studied. It should be studied. We should say like, oh, if you take this herb or milk thistle, or like, does it support your liver? Does it make it better? If you take these things that help pull out metals, like chlorella, like does that help pull out aluminum? I don't know. Like, does it better or worse? Who knows? But like, why would we not study that?
That's a good point. Like, why
you
would
should
we
study
go
it? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't have a problem if people do it, but I can't tell you it's better.
Yeah.
Because it's not been researched.
This is a big key about like just diving in and researching. Now, where do you see, since Secretary Kennedy's into this, and you've been up into the White House too, and are you on advisory board and such?
I'm not on any specific committees. I just try to help out where I can.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that I'm very, very grateful for is like when we talk about just doing more hard science. I think with anything, whether it's like vaccines or any type of medical issue or condition, one of the things about talking about, let's say, COVID, and when they started to amp this part up, like back, what was it, 2019, 2020, how is it so injurious to people? Like, what was like going in the body that would, like, people were having heart attacks? Is that right? Or they're having heart issues? And they were having. So
for the COVID vaccine, the main thing is myocarditis, and I guess the running main theory would be that the spike protein or the proteins that are created so with the mRNA, you're putting in the mRNA, you're putting the genetics, it creates the proteins. Your body mounts an immune response against that, and so that if you're exposed to it again, you have the antibodies. The concern is if the spike proteins get to a place where it's not supposed to get to, then maybe you have some issues in that location. So if it gets to your heart, it can create some inflammation or scarring in your heart, and it can lead to something like myocarditis. So that's the concern, and it certainly happens. I mean, that's well documented at this point, that especially with young males, there's a significantly increased risk of myocarditis with the vaccine over not getting the vaccine. So it's a big concern, and that, again, I think opened up, again, the discussion on, like, okay, well, what other, if this happens, well, what about the other vaccines? What are they doing to us?
One thing I was going to ask, yeah. What happens with the others? In the book and in your own research, is there a vaccine? I've always wanted to know that was, like, the most problematic? You know what I mean? Like in history, like you say, this one vaccine, or maybe there's many. I'm just saying.
I mean, probably COVID vaccine, right?
Yeah, COVID.
I would think. I mean, it's so hard to know because it's so recent and people are so charged on the topic.
Yeah.
But I just go back to, there are two worlds with the COVID vaccine. There, it's the best vaccine. It was the best thing ever, and then it's like the worst thing ever, and it's killing more people than it's helping. And it's really hard to know what's true because those two sides never talk. But certainly there are more reports of concerns than ever before, but people are more hypersensitive to it about reporting. So it's really hard to know. But I think that there's certainly more concern than any other vaccine ever about the COVID vaccine. And there's extremely strong opinions, and many people feel like it should be pulled, and other people still think it's, the benefits outweigh the risks. But I just go back to, I think it's people talking over each other, and the medical establishment's like, well, we look at the research and data, and it decreases your risk of getting COVID. And if you get it, then your risk is decreased, your risk of serious disease is decreased, and that's why we respect it and we want to do it. And then the other people are like, okay, but the risks are very high. Yeah. And the medical community doesn't necessarily agree or listen to some of that research or some of the concerns that it is really causing this many issues. They don't really support that. So it's hard to know which exactly one is true. But I mean, so many people just anecdotally have had issues with the vaccine. So I think there's certainly a higher rate of concern than the medical community has agreed upon, and I think that's true of all vaccines.
Yeah, is that why? And we're going down that path of they would get boosters, and that there's not so much data behind the safety aspect of it. So were they giving boosters out because like there was new strands of it, or was mutations of the old vaccine or the old virus?
Yeah, so boosters were two different things. So in general, you're getting multiple vaccines to improve your immunity. So you get a vaccine, that immunity wanes over time, you boost it back up so that it can help you have a more long-term robust immune response. Or some vaccines just don't work the first time you get it, so you get a few of them just to make sure that it works for you. Mm-hmm. With a respiratory virus, so like flu or COVID, they change so much. So they mutate all the time. So boosters, you receive them. I mean, it's not really even a booster per se. It's just a new vaccine or a different vaccine because you're changing up what's in there to protect against the new thing. So, I mean, flu is easier because people know of it. It's like it mutates so much, they're guessing every year what they think you're going to get. Mm-hmm. That's why you can't just get one flu shot and you're good for life. It's always different. So you're protecting against that strain that you think is going to be happening right now. So with COVID, they were changing it for the new strains.
Wow. With if you kept getting a booster, I think that would be one of my thoughts too and questions, is that if you had so many of, let's say, the adjuvants or the preservatives, if your body didn't have a good detox pathway, could that accumulate after all those boosters and stick around in your tissues?
Well, that's the concern.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have research on it.
That's the concern with all those things. I mean, that's the concern with aluminum. Maybe you don't detoxify well. Does it stay in your body? Does it, is the amount so small that it's fine? But if you get 20 of them, it's not so fine, especially if you have some sort of genetics where you don't detoxify and it stays in your body, or maybe you have kidney issues. I mean, those are reasonable questions. I don't know. Modern medicine says no, but I don't think it's that cut and dry. I don't think it's that simple. So that's where I think we need that research in the long run, because that's a very reasonable question. Like, if you get a bunch of boosters, is more better? And more is not always better. And that's where this weird medical system is like, oh no, you can get 1,000 boosters, it's totally fine. Well, maybe not. Like, maybe there's a decreasing, diminishing returns to the point where it's negative. And even with flu shots, there is a lot of concern around, if you get more flu shots, does that decrease its efficacy? Like, there was that really recent study from Cleveland Clinic from last year where it was a very good study in a lot of people, and there was a higher risk of getting the flu, like 30% higher, I think, with getting the flu shot in the Cleveland Clinic last year. So it's like that is research that we have to follow, because maybe that research wasn't done right. Maybe that's a very specific population. Maybe it's specific to that vaccine. But if the flu shot gives you more chance to get the flu, then what are we doing? Like, why would you give someone the flu shot if it increases your risk for the flu? And I'm not saying that it does, but I'm saying if you have a great study like that shows that kind of thing, we need to do 10 more studies just like that and look at whether that's true across the board, whether that's true in the future. Because do you want to give somebody a vaccine that increases your risk to get the thing you're trying to prevent against? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
And if somebody told me that, like, just like in any other product, I'd be like, yeah, that doesn't make it.
Like, why would you do that? You're not trying to give people more flu and then also the potential side effects from the vaccine. You have to know if that's true or not. If it's not true, okay, great. It was one study. It wasn't done right. Whatever happened. But if it is true, don't give the flu shot, or change the flu shot to make it work better. Like, would you want to give your patient a product that increases the risk to get the thing? Of course you wouldn't.
No,
you would be
not
like,
at all.
all right, okay, let's go back to the square root here. Let's go back to the basics here. Let's reformulate. Let's do something different. Like, of course that's what you want to do.
Exactly.
We're not here to give people more flu. Right? Like, that's not controversial. Like, I don't know if it's true or not. I know that that's what the study found. So
Yeah.
let's go find that if that's true or not. Like, that's important.
Yes. Okay, so they would find like this information, and now there's going to be a point, I would hope, like in all healthcare research, where we could cut down and go deep, and find out there's something wrong or not advantageous about any vaccines. But one thing I was always wondering is if you did find out like this, like we're saying, oh, this gives you the flu. Okay. Is there so much vaccines that are like built up? Like, I'm just asking because I always think about products because, in our world, we have business and you think, is there a lot of vaccines that are held in a certain area and they like to discontinue them? I mean, that would be like quite a bit of money to like just discard that and then do a new vaccine or do more research. Are they just stockpiled somewhere, some of the vaccines? Or are they made like really quickly?
No, they're made as they go, but I mean, again, it's like if something's not working, shouldn't we figure that out?
Yeah.
And shouldn't we get better products? Like, it's very arrogant to think that we have the best products ever. Like, we have to make better products for the future.
Yeah.
And we need to minimize risks and assume that not everything's the best it's ever going to be in humanity. And let's figure out, like, maybe we can decrease some of the vaccines. Maybe we don't need some of them anymore. Maybe we can change up some. Maybe we don't need as many doses of some.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do fewer with the same benefits. And decrease the risks. And why would we not want to do that? Like, maybe you just don't need to do hepatitis B at birth anymore for everybody. Like, of course, if you have hepatitis B and you're giving birth, you should probably take the hepatitis B vaccine. You don't want your baby to get it. There's a very high risk. But for everybody else, maybe we just don't need that anymore. Maybe you can do it when you're 10, or maybe you can do it a little older, and maybe the risk for a one-day-old baby is just not outweighing the benefit for those kids. Like, these are like discussions that should be had.
Yes.
Because more is not always better.
No, do you think that with the new administration or like the way it's going that they're going to have better guidelines of questions and like if for the doctors to ask the patient ask the doctor?
Not in the short term. I mean, I think what we're going to see in the short term is a lot of questioning of a lot of assumptions.
Yeah.
And they're going to start pushing for more new research, but it's going to take time. And I also think that regardless of whatever is found, if anything is negative against vaccines, they're just going to blame it on Secretary Kennedy's anti-vax and he found what he wanted to find, and they're not going to take it at face value. So I think for things to change, you're going to need a lot of research and research outside of what he's doing, and it's going to have to be repeated. And I think if that happens, then doctors will be a little more open to being like, okay, well, we thought one thing, but now we have some new research. Let's tackle it in a little different way. So I think it's good because no one was even open to having the discussions before. Like, we couldn't talk about this a year ago, and now you can. So I think that's the first step. But it's going to be slow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's extremely rapid in the sense that you couldn't talk about anything before, and now it's being talked about. But I don't think we're going to have definitive data for a while because, again, you have to, if you really want to do it and you really want to have proof, you got to go forward. You have to get a bunch of kids. You have to get a bunch of people. You can never do a blinded trial because you're not going to be able to get kids that are unvaccinated in a trial. So you're going to have to do it open where people say, I don't want to vaccinate my kids. I'm willing to be part of the study. And you can study it that way going forward. It's not perfect, but it's as good as you're going to be able to do. And we could study things over the next 10, 20 years, follow kids forward and see, do more kids get autism? Do more kids get autoimmune conditions or not? And maybe they won't. And that's going to be the research that's going to make people feel confident to get vaccines. They're going to be, we studied kids for 10 years going forward, and there's no difference in the groups between vaccinated and unvaccinated kids. That's going to make people more confident. It's not because of autism. That's what they're going to do. There are more vaccines. And if it does show that there's a difference, okay, then we should figure out why.
Yeah, completely. This is really eye-opening because I'm really impressed, like, with your passion about it. Like, were you always very inquisitive that got you into medicine? Like, side note, like, because you were like, what pushed you into this direction?
Yeah, I mean, I was a very inquisitive. I liked science. I love working with kids. I used to coach my brother in hockey and baseball, and I worked at summer camps. So I liked getting ahead of issues. I thought, like, working with kids was just more fun than working with adults to actually listen, and it's more funny in the office, and you can actually, like, help it's harder to help adults, I think, than kids. Like kids actually do stuff and they get better, and you can actually prevent things. But medicine doesn't seem to be doing that right now. It's not about prevention. It's only about treatment. And the vaccine thing, like, no, I never thought I'd be part of this.
Yeah.
This found me. This was like from just doing what I'm doing and just getting frustrated and realizing that this is something that I can contribute to, because people are not talking about it, and there actually are not a lot of people that do what I do, which is kind of have a foot in both worlds.
Yeah.
And I think that's very useful, because I don't think the modern doctor in general understands the other side and understands the parents' concerns, and they never even see some of this stuff. And I think the integrative world just thinks vaccines are the worst thing ever sometimes, and they blame everything on vaccines, and that's not always true. I mean, vaccines have some good too. So I think that there's a discussion needed in the middle, and it doesn't really exist that I know of.
And I think that's what I loved about when you look through and you check out how you address the questions in the book. And with parents, are there, like in a synopsis, like right now, would there be, of course, read the book and find out like what you could ask your doctor, but are there like basic like questions or things like a parent should look out for when they go to their pediatrician or something, and just be inquisitive and ask? I mean, is there any basic questions about vaccines that you would have them?
Well, I mean, even more basic than that is, I think we need to be aware that it's okay to ask questions.
Yeah.
Like you have to be okay with advocating, and you have to know that you don't have to go to the doctor that you're going to.
Yeah.
And you have to be honest with yourself about what's important to you, and if having discussions about vaccines are important, or you maybe don't want to go on the regular schedule, you don't want to do them at all, let's say, that's your decision, you need to make sure that you ask those questions up front. Like, you don't want to go to a doctor that's going to force you to do something or make you cry. If you want to have a discussion, like if you want to talk about it, find a doctor that's willing to talk about it. Like that's what you have to do. And you have to be okay with, if you're going somewhere and it's not working out, okay, switch. Like, doctor doesn't want you there if you don't want to do what they think is right. So they're not going to have any hard feelings if you switch doctors. But we need to do that when we have to asking questions. And I think at the end of the day, the more people that ask questions, the more that the needle's going to move, because doctors are going to be forced to look into this and forced to think about it. And I think that is happening, because I see it in doctors groups all the time now, where a lot of doctors just don't know what to do now, because they like, I'm getting all these people that have all these questions and all these people that don't want to do it or go slow, and I don't know what to do, and I don't want to kick out all the patients because I don't have any patients. So I think if like most people start to ask questions, doctors are going to be forced to look into it. So I think it matters.
That definitely is. That, are you finding that other doctors like yourself are calling you or messaging you and asking questions about this, about like the research?
I certainly changed. I mean, certainly since I've been talking about it, a lot of people have reached out and said, "Oh, thank you for doing this," and I had my own questions. And doctors in med school or residency that are like in training are like, "Oh, it's so great to hear, because I have all these questions." So I think because of social media and because of the climate now, people are asking questions. Maybe not the doctors that are like 75, they're at the end of their career. But I think, again, doctors are good people. Like, pediatricians are not bad people, right? Like, these are good people. They don't want to harm anybody. But if you're not exposed to some other questions and you're not exposed to the research and data, you have no reason to question it.
That's right. I think that one of the things that hopefully as we progress in our careers, I think one of the things that's the most life-giving is that you're always asking questions. You're always almost challenging yourself, because there's many even things like in Chinese medicine, I'm always like, did that really work really well? Like, could I have gone deeper into it? And I think that since there's a set standard from all over the years, it's just like, this is how it's done, and like we're not going to look into it and try to investigate. I did not know that about, like, there's not a heavy research like built up. I did not know that. That's one thing that surprised me when you go through the book. It's like there is nothing out there that shows the data. So where do you see? Do you think with this, the companies or vaccine companies, do you think that they're going to make shifts or make changes, or do you think they're going to stay on the same pathway until they have to shift?
They're not going to change until we make them change. Why would they? I mean, if you're a CEO of a company, your job is to make more money.
Yeah.
That's their job. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how it works. So they're not going to do anything that makes them do anything else unless we force it.
Yeah.
I foresee that Secretary Kenny is going to try to force the issue to some degree. So I do think we'll see some motion and shift. I think whether we're going to see a long-term shift is going to kind of depend on the long-term pathway that we take, how long he's in there, who follows him up, where things go, that kind of stuff. I mean, not everything he's going to do is great, but you don't have to agree with everything that everybody says. But I think for sure we need a shakeup, and he's doing that, which I think is good. I think we need to get a lot of conflicts of interest out. I think that the pharmaceutical companies know that if you pay for the news and you pay for the medical schools and you pay for the journals and you pay for everybody, then everybody kind of looks the other way on anything, and they're not going to really dive too deep into that. So we have to change that too. Like you can't have the organizations that are supposed to watch out for your product safety be mostly funded by you. It just doesn't work. So that's where we have gotten to right now, and that's got to change. And I think if it does, we will see things. And I also think you can't put things back. Like
you can't.
The information's out there. COVID happened. People are aware. So I don't think things are going back. I just hope that we continue without having censorship, because if things get censored again, it makes it really hard for things to move forward. As long as stuff isn't getting censored, we can have these conversations reasonably and logically, and then doctors are going to listen.
I would think that, if a company back, 20, 30, 40 years ago was doing that, they have, now they had the time to like follow somebody for so many years.
They don't do that. They don't follow people for years. So so it's not the companies. It's not really their fault, because that's not the way that the research is done. Mm-hmm. They study things pre-licensure. So before it comes out. So they study up until it comes out. They'll study safety for however long. They do different kinds of trials, but it might be a couple weeks, it might be a couple months, maybe it's a year or two, but they don't study people past that point. Not really. You can, but they don't really usually, because once the thing's proven to be effective, they give it to everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the same thing with COVID, right? It's like, the vaccine works. All right, let's unblind the trial. Let's give everyone the COVID vaccine. So there's no way to follow them forward to see if they have more problems unless you do it. So you have to study people for 10 or 20 years if you want to look at long-term complications. Otherwise, how would you know? If you get hepatitis B when you're a newborn and you get cancer when you're 15, how do you know it has anything to do with hepatitis B? You're not going to be like, well, I got my hepatitis B when I was 2 months old. It must be because of that.
One other thing, I know I'm respectful of your time. I just appreciate you being here with me. But I think about like combination shots. I know there's a little extra add-in because I want to know as a practitioner, when you have combination shots, like for people listening, they do it for ease and for quick administration, but what happens when they put a ton of them in there? I mean, I know there's no research behind it, but is it just because of efficiency they're doing that, or?
So it's mainly for efficiency. I mean, there are a lot of shots, so if you can do fewer pokes and fewer visits, that's a good thing, I would think, and just in general from like a public health standpoint, because a lot of things are for general public health. Like not everybody can get to the doctor 30 times. Not everybody, it costs money. They have to get there. They have to go to the visit, sit there. It's a lot of time. So as much as you can combine is kind of the general theory. So I wouldn't say there's no research on combo vaccines. So again, pre-licensure, they are studying things. So they would study the combo shot versus the single shots against each other. And they would say there's no increased risk for this combo shot versus the single shot. So that much we know in general, that there's not a huge increase of safety risk, but it's not still studied in terms of all the other issues. So we don't know if that increases your risk of asthma, autoimmune conditions, long-term complications, because you're not studying those things.
That's right.
In that kind of research.
That's why you were talking about like the intussusception, and you thought of some of the symptoms that people have that they experience, and there's not enough research out there to say like, well, if somebody comes in with some kind of digestive issues, like there's not enough research to say that was pointed right back to the vaccine.
Yeah,
so.
It's very hard to do that unless you're following kids forward or you're looking for those things and reporting on them in a study. So it's not the best kind of research, the most robust kind of research. And when some of these things are studied, and there are not many research studies out there that do it, but when there are some studies out there that are like, well, if you do more vaccines on one day, you have higher risk of side effects that week. So like there are sub-studies that show that.
Yeah.
It's not a huge increased risk. They're not like necessarily severe.
Yeah.
But it's not so cut and dry. Like this stuff does exist a little bit, but most people don't study it because you don't get it published if you find a problem. And the majority of people that are studying vaccines are looking to not find a problem.
That's right. and this is one thing, like with the book, and when you're talking about having very good data, hopefully to start backing up your decision and such, do you think that this is going to hopefully create more conversations that are like very amicable between doctor and patient, or between like the people who hope so, because they're not afraid to ask?
The literal goal of the book was for discussion. It's not to get people to do it. It's not to get people to not do it. It's to provide information. The word vaccine has been in the shadows. It's something we can't talk about. That has to go away. We have to be able to talk about it. We have to have discussions like this. People have to be able to talk about it at home. They got to be able to talk about it with their spouses. They have to be able to talk about it with their doctor. And if you can't talk about it and it's just this taboo, evo conversation, we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And there are just too many people that feel woo-woo or crazy or scared to ask questions, and it shouldn't be that way. Like, it shouldn't. There's no reason. It's a medical product. You should be taking it because you're comfortable, because you feel like it's going to help your child. That's why you should take a vaccine, not because you're forced to, not because the government says you're required to do it. It should be recommended based on good research and data, and you should look at the research and data and be like, oh yeah, I see this is really good for me. Like, I don't want polio, and I have a big risk to get polio, and there's no risks from the disease, the vaccine, so I'm going to do it. Like, that's why you should take a product. Like, it's not going to have zero risk. You have cancer medication, right? It's like, we know if you're going to take chemotherapy, your hair might fall out, it might affect your immune system, you might die. But you discuss it with your oncologist, and you weigh the pros and the cons, and some people choose not to do it, and other people choose to do it because they feel like it might save their life. That's how we do everything in medicine. A vaccine should be no different. You should discuss it, you should take it because you want it, because it helps you, or you feel like it helps you, and if you feel like it's not the right thing, that's your choice. And you might be wrong. Your kid might get sick of one of these things. That's how the world works. There are risks for everything, and we have to decide what we want to do and not do. I don't want anybody to get sick. I don't want anybody to get measles and die, but I mean, that's the reality of the world. People have to be able to make decisions that are right for them, and you might get a vaccine and have a bad reaction, and that was the wrong decision, and you might not get a vaccine and get very sick or get pneumonia, or your kid could die from one of these things. That's happened, right? It's not that common, but it happens, so that's how it is. But that's how we do everything else in medicine. That's what I think our job is not to force people to do things.
Definitely. I think like even the verbiage in the book, the one thing I really appreciate is that it's logical, it's very non-wavering. Like you said, I'm not trying to tell you to get it or not to get it. Like, you can tell it's really like plain and straightforward within the book. And so I would urge, that people that are having these questions to look at your book and read it, because it really is something I've always some of my friends who are in the healthcare say don't touch on vaccines because that could be something that's very touchy, and and I'm like, okay, I don't want to step on too many people's toes. But now in this day and age, you being here and us talking is very, very enlightening. And I want to ask you in the future, where do you see your path? Do you feel like you're going to get more into being a spokesperson, or just like keep practicing? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think it seems like things are moving more into advocacy, and I like that. I mean, I like doing this. I think this is great.
Yeah.
I think discussions are great, and advocacy is fantastic. I think we need it, and I feel like I'm in a unique position, again, being in both worlds, to be able to speak for a lot of people that aren't able to speak.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I have tried to help out where I can, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
But, I'm open to whatever. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm glad you are, and I think that because you're still in the trenches of working with people and guiding them, and you're in practice, and I think people really respect that you're still hitting it hard and still trying to help. So truly, I'm really grateful, man. I'm glad we got to connect and on socials, and we have mutual friends, and I just think how the world can be small, and I love it, man. And so, okay, tell everybody where to find you. What's your feed, and what's your Instagram and your social media?
Sure, yeah. So at Dr. Joel Gator on Instagram or X is probably the best place, and then the book, Between a Shot and a Hard Place, you can get it anywhere that books are sold, Amazon, wherever, or theshotbook.com.
Yes, and we're going to have the link on there for the caption, and we really appreciate it, man. Again, you know me, man. You can always come back, and we love to have you here. And guys, really, if you have any questions, please check the book out. And I'm telling you, I didn't know the things until I looked through the book, till I talked to Joel here. And Doc, I'm seriously thankful that you got to tell us all about these things. And guys, one of the things I'm always very, very adamant about, even in my practice, I always say, research and do your due diligence. And it's shown that it needs to be done more and more in our culture and in our government as well. So anyway, until next time, we really appreciate it. If you have anybody that needs more information concerning this subject, please forward this over to them. Send them the link. Like and subscribe. Send us some comments. You know where to find Dr. Joel at. So send us some questions. And if you guys have any extra input, let us know. All right, until the next time, from all of us here at Ancient Health Podcast, take it easy. Thanks, Dr. Joel.